The previous scene, they were in class, Maverick told Slider that he smells, and then boom, volleyball. No fucking sense.
The explanation, if you had their bodies, if you were all greased up a pilot.
That's all I would do.
Yeah.
I just roamed the streets of Scottsdale looking for volleyball games to participate in.
You would either ride a bicycle around your motorcycle or you'd play volleyball.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down to Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked out.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you even remember what Blockbuster Video was? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I'm one of your three hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Jean Jennifer Lyons.
Take me to bed or lose me forever.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. Each week the audience selects from 4 movie choices that we then break out our race car VHS tape rewinders and watch the movie that tallied the highest number of votes. At the end of each podcast, the three of us will provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would need to take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts and share with a friend. It really helps the podcast grow. And if you're really feeling extremely generous, leave a 5-star review on our iTunes or Google Play or YouTube. That being said, Big D, we have been on hiatus. We're over there at Shat on TV doing Game of Thrones. It's taking up so much of our time because we're releasing 3 a week, but we love Shat the Movies so much. We love 80s and 90s movies that we can't quit them.
Yeah, and we were getting some tweets and some direct messages from the Shat the Movies listeners, and they were saying, we miss you, the ride home isn't the same. And I said, you know what, let's try to squeeze one in. And I'd recently flipped on Top Gun. It was on Hulu. And I said, this is a perfect movie for the audience. Everybody loves it, and I know it's not as good as everybody thinks. So I said, let's just skip over Blues Brothers, which is our next scheduled movie, and let's just do a movie everybody loves.
If you've never listened to Shat the Movies, we are going to spoil it for you. So if you haven't watched Top Gun before, or you haven't watched in a while, the best thing to do is go ahead and watch that, press pause, then come back and press play. But if you haven't watched the movie in a while and you're too lazy to go watch it on Hulu, then we're going to give the plot for you, and then we're going to break down in a linear format our thoughts on the movie. That being said, Top Gun is a 1986 American romantic military action drama film directed by Tony Scott and produced by Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer in association with Paramount Pictures. The screenplay was written by Jim Cash and Jack Epps and was inspired by an article entitled Top Guns, published in a California magazine 3 years earlier. The film stars Tom Cruise, Kelly McGillis, Val Kilmer, Anthony Edwards, and Tom Skerritt. Cruise plays Lieutenant Pete Maverick Mitchell, a young naval aviator aboard the aircraft USS Enterprise. He and his radar intercept officer, or RIO, Nick Goose Bradshaw, played by Anthony Edwards, are given the chance to train at the Navy's Fighter Weapons School at Miramar, Fighter Town, in San Diego, California. This movie, in 2015, was added to the United States Library of Congress for film preservation in the National Film Registry for finding it culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, and a sequel is being made called Top Gun Maverick over 30 years later. If humankind is wiped out, if the aliens come down and they pull up the list of, what was entertainment and what was the upper echelon of entertainment, does this movie deserve to be on that list?
I mean, I think it would give them a good indication of what went sour here on Earth when we made what we could refer to as a romantic military action drama.
No, this is a time capsule of 1986. If you want an accurate representation, there is no better piece of film to add to the registry than Top Gun.
Yeah, but think about 1986. Other movies that came out during that year. So another military movie actually won Best Picture that year, Platoon, directed by Oliver Stone. And also Ferris Bueller, another movie we've done on this podcast, came out that year. Now, this was the #1 commercial, but it was by far not necessarily the best movie that came out that year. I just think that there's so many other movies that deserve to be in the National Register of Films versus Top Gun.
Well, I mean, the U.S. government also put money into making it, so that might have something to do with it. They just want a return on their investment.
This is a 2-hour-long recruitment film for the Navy, right?
Yeah, but we're going to talk about that. Who are they trying to recruit? Maverick is not your ideal pilot. If you're telling kids, hey, come join the Air Force and do whatever the hell you want, buzz the tower, don't follow the rules, act dangerous, get people killed, I don't think this was an effective recruitment tool, even though we know that the numbers jumped up for people wanting to join the Navy and the Air Force.
Well, what are your first memories of this movie? Where were you when you first encountered Top Gun?
So I was a huge G.I. Joe fan growing up as a kid. I loved the cartoon. I loved the toys. So one of my favorite toys was the Sky Striker, the F-14 Tomcat, which is this plane. And it came with Ace the pilot. And I remember saving up for it for like 6 months. You could pull the lever back and the wings would expand and the landing gears came down. So when this movie came out 3 years later, I was 13. I can remember going the opening weekend. And it just, as a kid, it was my kind of insight into what the military would be. And subconsciously, I think this affected me years down the road wanting to join because I wanted to be Maverick.
You were like, can I be a pilot? And they're like, how about we put you in air assault? Kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
No, but I was 6 years old. And first of all, I had that F-14 Tomcat as well, the G.I. Joe Tomcat. But to give you an indication of my poor, humble immigrant upbringing, mine didn't have the pilot or the canopy bubble or any of the landing gear or wings. It was just the body of the fuselage is what I had. So I was 6 years old. I was in the front of a packed theater, and my sister said she was watching me watch this movie, and she said that because we're up front, my head nearly swiveled off my neck trying to watch these dogfights, which still to this day, and we'll talk about how they were shot, you get a little bit of a pain and muscle spasm there. I also apparently drooled on myself because my mouth was wide open for the whole movie. Again, when you're 6 years old, this is fascinating stuff.
I wasn't a big G.I. Joe guy. I mean, I enjoy G.I. Joes, but of my friends in my little cul-de-sac that I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, there was a guy who lived in Jacksonville's actually a big Navy town. And one of my friends, Brian Say, he lived across the street from me, and his father was a big Navy guy, and he had like every G.I. Joe character there was. He too had the F-14 Tomcat with all the trimmings, so I used to play with his G.I. Joes. I was a bit more of a big Transformers guy, but I'm pretty sure this was the first VHS movie my family ever owned. I'm pretty sure this is the reason they bought the VHS player in the first place. This was like the only movie we had for years, and I'm pretty sure my stepdad, this was like his favorite movie. It might still be his favorite movie. I don't know. But I also had, do you guys have this? The infuriating Top Gun video game on the Nintendo Entertainment System where it was nearly impossible to land on the aircraft carrier. Did you guys have that?
I had it and loved it. It was like a giant loop. Like you would fly over forest. You would take on a wave of fighters. Then you'd have to refuel. You'd have to line up the little, whatever that thing's hanging out the back of the fuel plane was.
It's a boom. It's called a boom.
A boom. And then at the end of the level, you had to land on the aircraft carrier's deck. A great game, really simple, and it was kind of a knockoff of Afterburner, but I spent many hours on it.
Again, as a testament to how poor I was as a child, my cousins would actually line up dining room chairs in line with each other, so we had our RIO in the back. So one guy would get to be Goose, while the other guy was Maverick playing the game on Nintendo, because we only had one Nintendo for all like 8 cousins, and we could take 2 at a time could play if one guy was in the back just giving radar readouts.
Shut up.
I'm not kidding.
So did Goose die? Like, did you die? Spoiler alert, Goose dies in the movie.
Goose would, you're absolutely right. Goose would have to die on each mission. It was great.
Yeah, but you talked about watching this on VHS. I can remember as a kid, there was a high-end audio-visual place in our town, and they were the first one to get the laser discs. They were the giant, people, kids today, they don't know what it was. It was the size of a record, but it was like a DVD, and they would play it on their most high-end TV in the shop, and it was probably laughable. Today, if we went in and looked at it, like pixelated like a CRT.
the 27-inch high.
Yes. But at the day, it was cutting edge. It was the best quality you could get. And I would walk in there and probably watch 20 minutes at a time until they kicked me out of the store. But good memories, fun times. And it was a time where really the resolution didn't matter. As long as you had an idea what was going on or you were sitting on the dining room chair with your cousins, it was all fun.
I want you jerks to remember these fond memories as you rip this movie apart. You merciless heathens.
This movie is quite terrible. Big D, play the trailer.
I'm going to send you up against the best.
Yes, sir.
You two characters are going to Top Gun.
I feel the need for speed.
For 5 weeks, you're going to fly against the best fighter pilots in the world.
You guys really are cowboys.
I don't like you because you're unsafe.
That's right.
I am dangerous.
The wild card flies by the seat of his pants.
Yeah, I guess when I see something, I go right after it.
It takes a lot more than just fancy flying.
Gentlemen, this school is about combat. There are no points for second place. You figured it out yet? What's that? Who's the best pilot? No, I think I can figure that one out on my own.
Tom Cruise, Kelly McGillis. Top Gun.
All right, the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise is on patrol near the Persian Gulf when radar contact is made with a MiG fighter. The combat air patrol of the Enterprise is vectored to meet the incoming aircraft, and the fighters involved are F-14 Tomcat interceptors, each manned by a pilot and a RIO. The pilot of the lead plane is Flight Lieutenant Peter Maverick Mitchell, played by Tom Cruise, a call sign appropriate for his arrogant, rule-bending attitude. His RIO is Lieutenant Nicholas Goose Bradshaw, played by Anthony Edwards. The second F-14 is piloted by Bill Cougar Cortell, played by John Stockwell, with Sam Merlin Wells, played by, surprisingly enough, Tim Robbins, as the RIO. The two F-14 split up and are surprised when a second MiG, shielded from radar by riding within feet of its leader, appears. Cougar is outmaneuvered by MiG-1, while Maverick locks his missile radar on MiG-2, who promptly disengages. MiG-1 stays on Cougar and is only chased off when Maverick flies upside down, closes up on the MiG, and flashes an obscene gesture to the enemy pilot. The MiG disengages and the two Tomcats fly to the Enterprise, but Cougar is so rattled he cannot land, forcing Maverick, low on fuel and against orders, to abort his own landing and talk Cougar onto the deck.
So you talked about the partnership between Tony Scott and the Navy. It was obvious that you needed the Navy to be on board, and they were. I mean, Paramount paid $7,800 in fuel an hour, and there was a case where Tony Scott even wanted to shoot a sunset landing, and the captain turned the ship around. He gave him a $25,000 check to turn back around so they could do that sunset shot, that famous one, $25,000. And it's beautiful, but come on, the movie starts out with 4 minutes plus of just stock aircraft carrier macho establishing shots. It seemed a bit excessive to me.
I mean, this was straight plane porn. If you get a boner from watching planes, this is the movie for you.
Yeah, beyond opening with that, we had the prologue, which is supposed to set up the whole movie, and automatically I'm having doubts here. First of all, they said that the prologue reads that to ensure that the handful of men who graduated were the best fighter pilots in the world. INSURE. Insure is a financial term, meaning that you are like purchasing insurance for something. I believe they mean ensure, which is to make sure. So already my radar is going off. And then it says that to make sure that the art of aerial combat isn't completely lost. Now, as far as I know, Top Gun was established in 1969, according to this. Aerial combat started in like 1913. So in 50 years, it's already a danger of being lost. That seems a bit suspect to me. I'm not sure that's why they started Top Gun.
No, they did. So this is an accurate portrayal of why Top Gun was invented in the first place, or was created. So when they're actually talking about the ratio of fighter pilots to death being in aerial combat declining through the years, especially in Vietnam, that's why they did establish this school. So that is actually correct. But here's the thing. There were two independent studies. There was one by the Navy, and there was one by the Air Force. And the Air Force concluded they basically just need better radar instrumentation. They just need better technology.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, Raj, because also, if you see in the movie, you'll see this sweeping 360 radar. The F-14 Tomcats don't have radar like that. That would make no sense at all. It is a forward-facing 60-degree radar. So they've got this great, the classic maritime, circular radar that, an AWACS might have or a destroyer would have. Something to keep in mind in that movie. You would not see planes coming up from the rear on your radar.
So I imagine that these aircrafts, they were the most technologically advanced. They were cutting edge. Did they not have air conditioners? Because every single pilot is sweaty and glistening. It doesn't look like a comfortable place to be, and I wanted to know what was going on with the temperatures.
Well, the sweating on the aircraft carriers, that definitely is because they don't generally have central air. But on aircraft, it doesn't make sense to have air conditioning because as soon as you get, above the flight deck, it's cool up there. So you actually have to stay warm, not. So it doesn't make, I guess they'd only be sweating under their masks,
But it has to be pressurized up there, correct?
Correct. It has to be climate controlled.
Yeah, it has to be climate controlled.
Even if it's nice and cool, it doesn't explain why Maverick, he looks like he's in a sauna constantly.
Oh, but yeah, a wet Tom Cruise though, guys. I mean, let's be honest. That's when he's at his best.
Yeah, this cast, they're young, they're hot, they're ripped, and they're just glistening.
So I want to talk about the music. There are a lot of iconic songs on this, particularly Berlin's "Take My Breath Away," Kenny Loggins' "Danger Zone." So 2 smash hits. This soundtrack sold over 9 million copies. But what really blew my mind was actually that Top Gun anthem. We talked about the video game, and it's prevalent in the video game, but also it opens the movie here. And again, part of my childhood. This is the first song I learned to play on keyboard, the only song I learned to play on keyboard. I would hum it to myself all the time as a kid playing. I think there isn't a kid who grew up in the 80s who doesn't know this Top Gun anthem.
Yeah, but 9 million is a lot of records. Like, and I get it. It's pre-internet. It's pre-iTunes. It's was it LimeWire? What was Lime?
Yes.
Was it LimeWire?
Yeah, LimeWire was the big file.
That was the big one. And Kazaa.
Or it was also Napster.
Napster. It was before Napster. That's it. But why did people rush out to buy this soundtrack when the songs are played on repeat throughout the entire movie? So Kenny Loggins' "Danger Zone" is played 3 times. Berlin's "Take My Breath Away" 4 times. Kenny Loggins played with the boys 1 epic time. And the Righteous Brothers, "You Lost That Loving Feeling" 2 times. I don't understand why people felt the need to rush out and buy this soundtrack again.
Well, I'll explain to you. As the oldest member of the podcast, back then, not everyone had a VCR, and not everyone could go out and get a rental copy of the movie. So the best way you could relive it with your friends was a tape, a record, to listen to the music. And I remember that with the Breakfast Club. We used to listen to the soundtrack over and over again and kind of relive it. So it was that same thing. You wanted to feel the movie, and it had an Academy Award-winning song, "Take My Breath Away." So it kind of met all genres, and a lot of people wanted to buy it.
Did you ever dance to that in like a middle school dance or a high school dance? Like because you were 13 when this movie came out, so you were right at that age where you were dancing with girls. Was Berlin that slow song where you would saddle up to a nice lady and take her breath away?
No, we discussed this. I wasn't very successful in high school and middle school. I was the kid on the side of the gym, just kind of strangely looking on. I didn't lose my virginity until college, so no, there was no slow dance.
You would bring your toy F-14 Tomcats and wait till they played that song, and then you'd reimagine the movie in your head again?
Yeah, that may have hurt my chances.
Well, like, all the pilots have cool nicknames, right? They all have cool call signs. Who was your favorite, and actually, who had the worst?
I think Merlin's got to have the coolest one. He's got, like, the magical helmet paint with crescent moons and stuff on it. And it's just the implications there that you're, that you're some sort of a magician up there. I really liked Merlin.
Oh, Iceman. He's cold as ice. Any situation, it's got to be Iceman.
But some of the Top Gun pilot call signs who actually flew in this movie, if you watch the credits, they're Bozo, D-Bear, Loner, Curly, Silver, Rabbi, Too Cool, Squire, Bio, Vita, Horse, Organ, Circus, Flex, Sobs, Rat. How do they get their nicknames? Are those given to them? Do they choose them? How does that whole work?
I'm going to take a wild guess and say that Rabbi might be Jewish.
Okay.
No, it's a lot like Raj, you and I are both Hash House Harriers. The call signs are usually it's given to you at a ceremony called a naming, much like the house. And basically, what they do is they will. It's basically based on something that you screwed up. So like it's a play on your name or some way that you screwed up. But basically, the pilots just get drunk and come up with a name, and then once you get your name, you usually keep it for your whole career. So. Imagining a bunch of drunk Navy pilots, it makes sense why some guys would name Bozo or D-Bear.
Yeah, but I mean, like, that's the ridiculous part of this movie is, right? Because they're getting drunk the night before, and then they're going up and they're like doing all this training. But then the stuff that they're training, the maneuvers that they're doing are absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because I lived near Beale Air Force Base for a while, and throughout my life, I've lived near different air bases, and I've met a few pilots, and typically they are gonna, you basically have to be on a detox essentially before you go up to fly. You can't just have drinks the night before and then hop in a jet.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, as far as my military experience, You could go out and drink as much as you wanted on a normal duty day, as long as you showed up to PT and you made the runs. If you fell out, you'd get your ass. They're going to smoke the shit out of you, and you're going to get hell. But if you can make the runs, by the time you shower, come back for formation, you're okay. But Airborne was a completely different thing. If you showed up on the day of a jump and you were smelling of booze, your ass was done. They were going to pull you out of the line. You don't play around when lives are on the line. And I can't see that they're going to be having this giant banquet and getting drunk the day before Top Gun starts.
I want to talk a little bit about the first indication that we get that Maverick is a dangerous pilot here. We're talking about this incident over the Persian Gulf. And when I was a kid, I didn't realize just what a reckless asshole Maverick is. The enemy has a missile lock on your fellow pilot, and you go inverted and you're snapping Polaroids. Like, this guy's life is on the line, and you can see that Cougar is shitting his pants, and Maverick is out there having fun. Like, if I were Cougar, I wouldn't thank Maverick. I'd tell him to fuck off and probably kick his ass in the hallway there, because, you know, he could have gotten me killed. And so, you know, later when Iceman calls him out for it, I nearly cheered. I was like, thank God somebody sees what an asshole this guy is.
Yeah, you can tell that the technology at the time limited the shots of aerial combat to one of two things. Either long shots, like establishing shots of where the planes were, or the stationary camera directly in the pilot's face. The only other time we see it is when they try to show this inverted -4G dive, and the canopies are right next to each other. It's comical. You know the F-14 has giant fins in the back? It doesn't physically work. But it establishes that Maverick doesn't give a shit about anyone except being cool.
Regardless of how terrible and how unrealistic the maneuvers that they're attempting in these type of planes, this movie has some brilliant fucking lines. Like, what is the line from this movie you still use to this day?
I love the "you'll be flying a cargo plane full of rubber dog shit out of Hong Kong." If you bring that line up and anybody else lights up in the room, you know they're a fan of Top Gun.
Mine is negative Ghost Rider, the pattern is full. I don't know when I started using that, but I've used it probably for the last 20 years of my life.
I'll use Splash 4 or Hollywood is hit. Hollywood is hit.
Is this when you're on taking a shit or?
Yes. I'm in the bathroom. Splash 4, Splash 4.
Big D, how many bomber jackets did you own in the 80s?
I wanted one. I didn't have one.
You never had one? I figured you'd be dressed in the corner of the dance halls in your bomber jacket and your Z Cavaricis with your G.I. Joe F-14 Tomcat plane.
Guys, this is going to blow your fucking mind, but I actually have my bomber jacket that I got. You just reminded me right now that I got after Top Gun. I've got it in my garage right now. It's a little 6-year-old's bomber jacket with the patches and everything.
Okay, so now I'm going to call bullshit. You've been giving us the boo-hoo-hoo, poor immigrant, one video game for 17 kids, broken toys, but somehow you got like a leather bomber jacket?
My mom is a hairstylist, and she had a client who was a pilot.
I want to see a picture of this thing.
I'll put it up on Twitter.
Well, Cougar sees the captain of the Enterprise, Tom Stinger Jordan, played by James Tolkien, and turns in his wings. This forces Stinger to change his intended disciplinary action against Maverick, for he must send a Tomcat tandem for additional combat training at the Navy's Fighter Weapons School in Miramar, California, near San Diego, and the captain is disgusted that Maverick is the only qualified candidate for the assignment. Maverick, however, is quietly overjoyed as regards the assignment as an opportunity, and upon arrival, begins to build a rivalry with fellow Tomcat pilot Lieutenant Tom Iceman Kaczynski, played by Val Kilmer, and his Rio, Ron Slider Kerner, played by Rick Rosovic. At the bar the night before their first day at the school, Maverick notices Charlotte Blackwood, played by Kelly McGillis, a pretty young blonde in jeans, and start hitting on her by following her into the ladies' room and serenading her. It seems not to work until the next day she appears at the school, revealing herself to be Charlie, a previously unseen DoD flight instructor that Maverick had assumed to be male. Though technically a civilian, she has mastered the flight simulator where she has beaten several actual pilots. She begins to become smitten with Maverick before the official competition begins.
So I'm going to try to make the argument throughout this review that Iceman should be the actual hero. He is the disciplined pilot. He is the patriotic American doing the right thing. And Maverick is what you should not be. He's incredibly reckless. Everything he does is dangerous to the people around him, yet everyone seems to enable him. He disobeys direct orders. Now, granted, he went back to save one of his fellow pilots, but he lands and then dusts off right away. He could have easily killed someone on the deck crew, He disregards the lawful order of the captain. He jokes about all of his infractions, even having sex with an admiral's daughter. He drives his motorcycle around without a helmet. He's going to get somebody killed. Oh, well, he actually does get somebody killed.
Yeah, I was going to say, doesn't he get someone killed? That's the whole point of the movie. Yeah, but it made every kid want to emulate him. You wanted to ride that fucking crotch rocket with no helmet. You wanted to wear the bomber jacket. You wanted to do flybys. Like, you wanted to be reckless. But, like, how small is the Navy that Maverick is the only qualified pilot? Come on.
Well, I mean, I think that he's still a good pilot. I don't think, I mean, there are several points in the movie where they point out that he is doing things that other pilots simply cannot do. But unfortunately, if he could just temper his recklessness, then we'd have something there. But I agree that he is a danger up there, and it's amazing that he's still got wings.
Here's my problem. The Enterprise would not have sent him because he represents that ship. He represents that admiral. By sending him, who's likely going to do something to get himself kicked out and just dishonored, that reflects back on the chain of command. They would have picked anybody but him. You don't want this hothead out there representing you.
But I mean, they've already established in that first scene, though, that he's the lead on that. So I mean, he's got one pilot that's better than he is in Cougar. And look, Cougar wasn't that tough to begin with. So I mean, if Cougar is your best, then I guess the rest of your pilots aren't very good.
Well, let's talk about the other pilots, right? So we talked about Iceman and Slider, right? I guess the only other pilots that they really focus on, because there's others like in their class, are Wolfman and Hollywood. The way that these pilots are depicted in the movie is a little suspect.
So I was watching this last night, and I tweeted out a photo. I almost fell off the couch. They're in class, and it's their first day at Top Gun. And the instructor's going through, just everything they're going to do. And Wolfman leans over to Hollywood and says, "Oh, I got a hard on." And I'm like, okay, that's kind of an odd conversation to have. But what Hollywood leans back real close and whispers, "Don't tease me." Did this kind of set radar off for you or some kind of alarms?
I mean, Big D, you were in the military. Obviously, I was only in JROTC, serving my country my own way. And, this sort of banter, especially in the 90s, and presumably in the 80s when things were even more androgynous, was like, this was funny. This is the way my friends and I talked in the locker room. It was, a lot of just playing on that, on the clear opposite of homophobia.
My experience was completely different. I felt the tolerance was not there. So one of my soldiers is an NCO. He had admitted that he kept trying to have, let's just say, non-traditional sex with his wife, and she was against it. So she said, if you let me...
Ear? Kept trying to fuck her in the ear?
In the backside, let's just say. He wanted to go in the rear. She said, if you let me use my toy on you, I'll let you do that to me. So he admitted that to the platoon.
That he did it? That he allowed...
Yeah, yes.
Did he enjoy it?
No, he didn't enjoy it, but his wife allowed him to do what he wanted. And instead of, you think like that locker room macho, yeah, he was teased about it for 4 years. People rode him. Like, hey, what's up? Let's go get the toy.
Like he rode that toy?
Yes. So I don't see, maybe pilots are different, but people kind of, unfortunately, they're closed-minded. And if you started making insinuations about co-pilots and getting turned on by them, I don't think it would have been accepted.
I don't think that discussion was hardly as inappropriate as the insane sexual harassment and acceptance thereof, and that you've lost that love and feeling scene. It gets progressively horrifying in the sense that he starts singing to this woman who has shown no sign that she wants his attention. And then suddenly she's surrounded in a bar where she's outnumbered like 20-1 by naval aviators, and they surround her. They're screaming at the top of their lungs. And then when she goes to get a little bit of relief in the bathroom, he follows her into the ladies' room. Like, this is the most horrifying experience I could think of. I don't understand how she doesn't run away from the situation immediately.
Is this where the bro term wingman came from? Did it come from Top Gun?
No, wingmen existed before Top Gun.
Are you sure? Are you positive about that?
Absolutely.
I don't know. I think we'd have to do some research on this because I can't remember. And again, I was 6 years old and we're the same age. I'm pretty sure wingman came from this movie, but you talk about that cringe-worthy moment. What's the most cringe-worthy wingman maneuver a friend has ever made you do?
Oh, I had one time I was at Casey Moore's locally here at the bar, and I had a friend who comes over to me and he says, "Hey, this girl's gonna come home with me tonight." And I go, "Great, man, good for you." He goes, "You got to come too." And I was like, "What?" So I go over. He's like, "Just come over." And he goes, "Well, I kind of told her that she'd be hooking up with both of us." And so I said, "Oh man, all right." So we go back to his place. They go in the bedroom, and I just hang out in the living room, and I'm watching TV or whatever, having a couple of beers, and 20 minutes go by. He comes out and he's like, "I'm gonna need you to come back here with us because I told her you'd be coming." And I was like, "Nah, I don't think so. I'm gonna stay here on the couch." He goes back in the room, and about 10 minutes later, she comes out and she's like, "Hey, I'm gonna need you to come." And so eventually the way it ended up shaking down was that I sat on a lump of his dirty laundry in the corner of the room while he was behind her, and I was just keeping eye contact with her while he was fucking her from behind.
Wait a minute. So they wanted you to come in and watch them have sex?
Well, she was under the impression that I was going to join in, and I just never did.
Why didn't you join in?
I chose not to engage that bogey. I just kept it clear. So I just sat on a pile of laundry so I was like eye level with her. It was really bizarre.
What you should have done is an upside down 4G inverted dive and taken a Polaroid. That's what you should have done.
Yeah, I don't think that was that odd. I've done that a couple times.
Well, what's your cringeworthy moment then? If you don't find that cringeworthy, what's the most cringeworthy thing you've ever done as a result of your pilot?
No, I think that's a bad sign that didn't even make me cringe. So I'd have to really go back.
No, we got to hear it. Hear it.
I'm saying that there is
almost go under the hard deck. You got to stay above 10,000 feet.
No, there's nothing that made me cringe.
Okay, so what's the craziest thing that would make people cringe? Like, what's the thing you can't even tell your wife?
Oh no, my wife knows everything.
Okay, so what's the story that you held out on?
I kind of sparked an orgy in New Orleans Mardi Gras.
What? Okay, how did you spark this orgy?
I went to Mardi Gras with she was an Army captain. She was a nurse. So she invited me to go. So I flew down there. It was her hotel room with two of her friends. We had relations. The next day I was out and took another girl back to the hotel. Her hotel. The girl who I was visiting. Yeah. I wasn't a very nice guy back then.
So you took a girl back to the hotel of the girl who invited you to come. Okay, all right.
Correct. So we're engaging in relations. 2 minutes later, I hear a group of people. The door opens. It's the girl I was visiting and like 10 random people, mixed guys and girls. They come sit in the room trying to make me feel uncomfortable. And instead of stopping, I just kept going. And before I knew it, everyone but the girl whose hotel room it was becoming, better acquainted.
And that woman actually went on to start her own pop band in the 90s called Everything But the Girl.
That's right. But anyway, all right, so so now that that's out of the way, you talk about uncomfortable conversations. There's a lot of uncomfortably close conversations throughout this entire movie.
I always think about Dirty Dancing, where they demonstrate that, the arm space, this is my area. In this movie, nobody respects that personal space. They get right up in each other's grill. I'm just like, back up a little bit. Back up. Was this maybe an 80s thing?
I mean, it really disturbs me that you guys saw so much homoeroticism in Lost Boys, which I think is a perfectly masculine movie. And yet in this one, where guys are basically, I mean, they're sword fighting off camera at every occasion. You talked about the tail fins on an F-14. If to be talking that close to each other, you're basically bumping privates. They are sweaty. They are in each other's space all the time. It made me uncomfortable.
Well, in his first exercise, Maverick takes on the school's resident enemy pilot, Lieutenant Colonel Richard Jester Heatherly, played by Michael Ironside, who's a boss, and succeeds in outmaneuvering him and shooting him down. But in doing so, he flies below a set minimum engagement altitude called the hard deck, and then compounds this faux pas by overflying a flight tower at an absurdly low altitude just to show himself off. Iceman chews out Maverick for this unsafe attitude, but Maverick refuses to have any of it, even after the school's leader, Commander Michael Viper Metcalf, played by Tom Skerritt, who's also a boss, summons him to his office and threatens to expel him should he continue this way. Metcalf, however, knows Maverick, for Maverick's father flew with him in Vietnam off the USS Oriskany and was shot down when he engaged the enemy in neutral airspace.
So this is the first scene at Top Gun where they're actually up in the air, and I was expecting a continuation of the exciting music that we had at the beginning of the movie. During this scene, it kind of falls off. This is by no means a perfect album or a perfect score. The music when Maverick and Jester were flying to each other, it sounded like the B-roll footage off of a commercial announcing the reopening of Joann Fabrics inside an Ohio shopping mall. Like, it was this weird, like very inoffensive kind of synth track, and I really couldn't get into it. But I want to talk about this hard deck, and just this was not a suggestion. So when you're flying in a practice like this, the hard deck is supposed to simulate the ground. If you fly below it, you flew into the ground. So you can't duck under it for a couple of seconds. It's not just a matter of like the rules. It's a matter of literally you have to treat it as the ground because you can't treat the real ground as the ground.
The amount of ADR, this is the problem I have with the movie, is that similar to like other Tony Scott helmed films like Days of Thunder, which is essentially Top Gun in NASCAR, they use ADR to explain what you're seeing on film, to explain the action scenes. So they actually, because they couldn't get the right action sequence together, they had to go into the recording booth and then tell the audience what is happening right here. So they tell, they tell about the hard deck. They tell all these things in ADR, which is essentially the movie equivalent of them putting it on screen and spelling out the instructions. Like, you're watching a terrible movie when they have to tell you what you're watching instead of showing you. Great movies. Go back and watch any great movie. Watch it on mute. If you can still understand what the movie is trying to convey, then it's a good movie. If you can't understand what the fuck is going on without the words, without the actors spewing lines, or without ADR, then it's a fucking terrible movie. And Top Gun's a perfect example.
I think they do leave some tidbits in the dialogue, though, that are short of beating you over the head, in the sense that there were little bits that you could still go back and research, like when they call no joy, what does that mean? Well, that's basically saying, I lost sight of you, should we reset this practice? And so you hear that called out, no joy, no joy. And so what Maverick's supposed to do is then either say that he wants to continue or they reset. He, of course, decides to be an asshole. And come after him. So there were little bits like that, and they knock it off. Like, when they say knock it off, that means let's reset. And so they had little bits of that, but I agree with you that they could have shown us this stuff rather than just beating us over the head with it.
What was shocking to me was the technology. This is 86, so these are the most advanced warcraft, the aircraft in the world. Did you see the training facility? It looked like they were using an Atari 2600 simulator to simulate the battles. It was all stick. It was absolutely terrible. No wonder you needed Top Gun, because the training aids were the equivalent of an airplane on a stick, and you guys would simulate flying it around, much like Gene did with his cousins and their Millennium Falcon.
Well, also, why are they holding the classes in the hangar? Like, what the hell's the point of that?
And why is Iceman wearing sunglasses inside a dark classroom?
Because it's cool, guys. It's awesome.
And it allows him to lean over and say, that's the gutsiest move I ever saw.
Okay, but why does Tom Skerritt's character care? Viper, why does he care so much about Maverick? Because his father seems to have been the same kind of pilot. Like, he's the one who disobeyed orders, engaged the enemy in fucking neutral territory, did something he shouldn't have done. How does he know Maverick as a result of that?
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. Later in the movie, we find out his dad, Maverick's dad died a hero. He had taken fire and still came back and fought off 3. What?
No, he didn't die a hero.
Yeah, I don't think he died a hero.
No, it's a big mystery. They almost made it sound like his father was disgraced.
Wait, hold the fuck on. Are you guys serious right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
The whole point is...
Were you not paying attention to the entire conversation later in the movie where he describes what happened to his dad?
Yes, he tells him at the end of the movie. But for all of Maverick's life, he has believed that his father's death was a mystery. That his father did the wrong thing.
No. But the question is, why does Viper care?
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Well, he cares because his dad died a hero, potentially saving his ass in a firefight.
Well, I think the real question should be, do you really get women by telling them, oh, my dad died being a hero and my mom died a year later and basically I've been raised with no family except for my co-pilot, my RIO. Like, does that really get women? Does that moody mentality? I mean, telling them all about this fucking song that your dad loved.
Well, I mean, it probably gets them better than like going to play volleyball and flexing for other dudes. But here's the thing: is that Maverick might even be lying on that, because he says that his dad, who disappeared in 1965, loved listening to "Sitting at the Dock of the Bay," which was written in 1967. So it makes you wonder, how much else is this guy making up? Is he just a con all around?
Yeah, he lies quite a bit. After the bathroom creepy scene, when she walks by leaving the bathroom. Goose asks, essentially looks and said, "Did you have sex with her?" And he goes, "Mm-hmm." Like nods yes. He's
listen, $20 in '86 was like the equivalent of like $200 now.
I think it's funny that Goose positions himself as the wingman and second fiddle to Maverick when really he's the winner at life when he is alive. You know, Maverick's sitting here trying to woo his instructor, who's like this haggard Kelly McGillis, when Goose is already married to Meg Ryan, and she has 10 times the charisma and vivacity. He's got a really cute kid. Like, I want to be Goose. I don't want to be Maverick.
Yeah, the best part of this movie outside of Iceman is Anthony Edwards. He steals the movie. When Iceman makes like that sarcastic joke, and then Edwards just starts laughing really loud and like slapping the back of I was like, that's fucking great. Anthony Edwards is cool. So is Anthony Edwards just cooler with hair versus like Anthony Edwards now bald? ER Anthony Edwards. Like, which Anthony Edwards do you prefer?
I think it's the mustache more than anything.
Oh, without a doubt, absolutely. But all I kept thinking while watching this movie was hot shots. Like, if you please write in, will someone please suggest hot shots for us?
Stop your begging.
I really want to watch hot shots because that's all I was thinking of. Because the next scene is like the beach volleyball scene. Gene, you talked about this. What the fuck is going on? Yeah. Why is this scene there?
So you've got these, greased up muscle men high-fiving to Kenny Loggins playing with the boys. And so I'm watching this at 8 a.m. before we record. And my girlfriend sitting next to me, she had just woken up and she this is a woman, says, "I can't take this much flexing in the morning." And so I'm thinking, I'm a guy, I'm a heterosexual male, and I'm watching this and I don't like it. She's a heterosexual woman and she doesn't like it. And so I'm like, who the hell did they make this scene for? And then I realized they made it for the children.
Oh, Jesus. Would you ever go do a physical activity if you had to in jeans and sand? That's a recipe for disaster.
Well, if I had a big date after it, I would.
Well, I mean, so you talk about the pose, like the posing and the flexing. Slider's pose. Who the fuck is he posing for? Why is he posing? How is this how like he serves the ball? Is he trying to be sexy? Is he trying to show off how greasy his bod is? No matter what, this fighting scene is hilarious.
So I was thinking about this last night, and if you notice, movies today don't show many scenes where people are having fun, right? Like having fun. And you realize it is probably the hardest thing to show on camera, right? To make it believable. An action scene can be thrilling. You can look scared. You can look sad. That's easy to portray. But if they put the three of us on a camera and say, "Guys, act like you're having fun," it's really hard to do. And I think that's why you don't see many scenes like this anymore.
So I agree with you. And I think this scene on its own wouldn't have been so homoerotic, but you pair it up with the music and the Kenny Loggins song. And if you didn't know the lyrics or hear the hook of Playing with the Boys, I'm going to read you the lyrics quick. "I'm moving in slow motion. Feels so good. It's a strange anticipation. Knock, knock, knocking on wood bodies. Working overtime. It's man against man. Playing, playing, playing with the boys. Staying, staying, staying with the boys. And chasing sunsets, one of life's simple joys. Is playing with the boys. Said it was a wrong thing for me to do." Okay, so you pair that with greased up hot dudes in jeans. It gives it a whole different connotation.
But you're right. But there's no explanation. Like, just purely, again, if you watch this movie on mute to try and judge this, whether or not this tells the entire narrative to an audience without any kind of dialogue, there's no explanation for why they're playing volleyball. The previous scene, they were in class, Maverick told Slider that he smells, and then boom, volleyball. No fucking sense.
The explanation, if you had their bodies, if you were all greased up a pilot.
That's all I would do?
You got to find.
I just roamed the streets of Scottsdale looking for volleyball games to participate in.
You would either ride a bicycle around, your motorcycle, or you'd play volleyball.
Yeah.
With the boys.
But like, all right, so right after the volleyball scene, he rushes over to have the first date with Kelly McGillis, right? He does very cringeworthy things. You talk about like going into the restaurant. I think the other cringeworthy thing he does, the first thing he gets there, he's like, "I can take a shower at your place, right?" If you really want to scare off a woman, go into her house for the first time, late, sweaty, smelling from, oil greased up. You got sand all over you from the boys. And then you ask to take a shower in their shower. Like, you wouldn't even let me take a shower if I came over to your house, Big D, like that. If I was like, "Oh, just got done playing with them boys. Can I take a shower?" And I wink at you?
I disagree. I look at it. It was a positive thing. I couldn't believe he had the balls to go over to her house for a date being stinky. So I thought that he had the respect to at least ask for a shower, which was being nice and considerate. And then also he gave her the chance of being like, maybe I'll join you. It was a win-win.
Yeah, I thought that they got together much quicker in the movie.
Yeah, I thought they had sex right away. So I was pleasantly surprised that Maverick actually teased her and made her wait. But I don't think she was a good match for Tom. You know, Tom's a good-looking guy. The rest of the cast, you got Meg Ryan, they're all relatively good-looking. And Kelly McGillis was 5 years older than Tom, but I got the feeling on screen she was much older.
Yeah, she looked like his mom. I think the youngest that she looked is when she had the ball cap on. And I thought, in this scene, she doesn't look so bad in the elevator scene. But then they get a close-up of her face, and you're like, nope, she looks quite haggard.
So the age difference is the bad thing? What about their height difference?
Well, yeah, that's a funny thing. I never pick up on it, but my wife, she's watching, and she is Googling the cast as we're watching. So she goes, you know that Tom Cruise is only 5'7"? She goes, oh, Kelly McGillis is 5'10". So then for about 10 minutes, we spent watching, wondering how they made Tom Cruise taller in all the scenes, wondering whether he was wearing those giant lift shoes or platform shoes. But it's got to be odd. He's a little guy.
This comes up all the time in porn shoots, actually, because when they're doing like the rear entry in the kitchen and stuff like that, you'll notice they never show their feet. Well, there's a reason for that. Is that the woman's standing up on a box or, yeah, absolutely.
Really? Like, so they have like step stools?
Yeah, because have you ever tried to, I mean, okay, you're a prime example, right? So at your height with your wife, like, it doesn't work, right? But you never see that in the movie. You never see the guy awkwardly squatting, trying to get in there. It's because they actually just have them stand on something. Yeah, usually like a stool or a box.
That needs to be like, why don't we go into business? We should go into business together making those type of boxes.
The squatty hottie?
The squatty hottie. There you go. That's right. Put us on fucking Shark Tank tomorrow. But like, think about, you talk about the type of relationship. It had to have been, because I was like you, Big D. I was like, oh, here, they're going to go into the room and here comes Belinda Carlisle's music. But then he like rides away saying, I'm going to go take a shower now. You know that the original script must have had them banging the first night, because the whole elevator scene where they're having the banter about the shower was a reshoot. And the reason she's wearing the ball cap is Kelly McGillis was already shooting another movie where she had her hair brown. So they had to hide the hair. And then do the whole nother reshoot of them where, Maverick's, he's pouting, and then they have this reckless driving chase scene through the streets of San Diego where he's like, what do you want? I was revving my motorcycle engine so high so you would think I was mysterious and cool. And then they go bang. The contest between Maverick and Iceman continues, and a later exercise Viper and Jester team up against Maverick and fellow F-14 pilot Hollywood. Maverick breaks a cardinal rule by abandoning his wingman to go after Viper, and in doing so, Hollywood is shot down, and the same fate befalls Maverick. But the worst is yet to come, for Maverick is teamed with Iceman, and Maverick, determined to win the school contest, angrily chews out Iceman for taking too long to attack an enemy craft. Maverick takes the shot, but when the two aircraft get close, the backwash from Iceman's thrusters cripple Maverick's engines, and the F-14 plunges towards the sea. Goose barely succeeds in yanking open the emergency ejection handles, but when the fighter's canopy pops open, the two pilots eject and Goose crashes into the canopy, killing him instantly. Maverick is devastated by Goose's death, and through an inquiry, clears him of wrongdoing. His confidence is destroyed. He nonetheless graduates from the class and is reassigned to the Enterprise.
So Maverick is, again, seriously an asshole in this situation. I cannot believe I rooted for him as a kid. He knows what his assignment is. His assignment is to serve as wingman. Everybody else who serves as a wingman for Maverick has no problem doing it, but this is a habit for him now. He will leave his position that he's supposed to be holding. He leaves his wingman to engage another aircraft that isn't even in the fight. So he's leaving his guy exposed. I just can't understand why everyone's so enamored with his flying when he doesn't know how to follow orders at all.
Yeah, he should be racked with guilt. He killed Goose. His lust for, attention and to win at all cost, it killed his friend. But what I was more amazed at is you have a co-pilot who's died. You've lost a $30 million jet. How long did this investigation go on? When they were doing that training exercise where he died, they said they had 2 weeks left of school. But yet they complete a full investigation, they clear Maverick, and they have time to get him up to fly a few days before graduation? Did they just check a box, or did they actually do an investigation?
Yeah, this is why no one actually watched JAG. It's because you thought it was all going to be like Navy pilots and lawyers out playing volleyball and then investigating cases and having it wrapped up within 30 minutes. But that's not JAG. That's not what it is at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's It's odd that if this doesn't get you flunked out of Top Gun, I don't know what does. You know, I mean, like you had an incident where you disobeyed orders, left your wing, crashed your jet, and your and your RIO died. Yeah, we're still gonna give you a way to go, dude. You had enough points. You're out.
And this was after you were told by the commander, don't do it. And you buzzed the tower at 400 knots. You need to get kicked out. And this would have gotten you kicked out.
But seriously, why does Goose die?
Goose dies because he ejects straight into the canopy. So he's supposed to, that chair's supposed to, it's got a charge and it's going to launch you way up in the air so you get clear of the aircraft, and then a chute automatically opens. But in this case, like in Die Hard, but in this case, he slams straight into the canopy.
And I'll give the explanation. Traditionally, an aircraft is flying forward. When the canopy is detonated and blows off, the airflow pulls the canopy back and clears the airspace above it. Their F-14 was in a dead flat spin. So it was essentially falling, so the canopy didn't have the rushing air to blow it out of the chair's trajectory.
Okay, so that's actually one of the things the movie actually got right then, because jet wash is a real thing, yes. And the Navy actually retrofitted F-14 engines, if I'm not mistaken, to prevent things like this from happening.
It is interesting that Maverick does get caught in a jet wash twice in a matter of like 2 weeks, but whatever.
But yeah, seriously, post Goose's death, Maverick goes on a soul-searching tour during which he mostly stares into the distance, wondering if he should continue to flight school, because ultimately the answer is yes. Duh, and he must return to the danger zone because that song is on again, and you can't say no to Kenny Loggins.
Okay, I know I'm going to take some shit for this, but Goose's death scene, Maverick clearing his effects, and then Meg Ryan delivering that line, "God, he loved flying with you, Maverick." I actually got a tear in my eye, and I got choked up about that part. I thought it was well done. One of the few points in the movie that actually had any sort of emotional resonance with me, but it was kind of heartbreaking.
So this is after he tries to sneak out with the effects and just leave her there distraught with her child. So the fact that he turned around and came back made you emotional? He's a dirtbag. He tried to walk out.
No, just the fact that, the way that the shot is established with Meg Ryan separate from the child in two separate seats, it's a quiet moment. I thought that Tom Cruise did a great job of tenderly gathering the artifact, his effects and putting them into the box in a very muted tone. And then finally, just that line that she delivers, the idea that despite all of his flaws and everything, and despite the fact that Goose lost his life, he did it doing something he loved, which was being with this flawed character, that he loved flying with him, that's all he wanted to do is be up there. I thought that it was, it was touching.
Yeah, but how many arguments do you think that they've had about that relationship? How many times do you think Meg Ryan said to Anthony Edwards' character, one of these days Maverick's going to get you fucking killed. one of these days, and he's like, whatever, woman, whatever. You lost that loving feeling.
I do a podcast with you, Raj. I know exactly how many times that conversation's happened.
Exactly. You guys are assholes. But yeah, no, Goose is the coolest. And a lot of the scenes are shot in Miramar, in and around San Diego. In fact, Kansas City Barbecue is right across from the convention center. And I tried to take my ex-girlfriend there. Janine got so mad when I took her there because, she's like, who the fucking cares about some restaurant that was in a movie that happened 30 years ago? Guys, she was a fun one.
You talked about the names of the pilots. Was it coincidence that the black pilot's name was Sundown?
I don't know. I looked at his helmet and it had sort of a Japanese thing.
Yeah, I think they did a recast.
When he's in the plane, you can see Sundown. When he's out on the flight deck having an argument with Maverick, it's gone. Yeah, so maybe halfway through the filming, they were like, let's not call the black guy Sundown.
No, I'm pretty sure Gene is onto something. I think it's more racist if it was like a Japanese pilot. I bet his original call sign was Bonsai, and then they changed it to Sundown. And then they just ultimately cast a black actor to come in and do it. But we can all agree that Iceman and Slider deserve to win, right? Like they were the best.
I just love that. If we could take a step back 1 second. I love that if you Google Sundown call sign, the second result is the one brother in Top Gun call sign was Sundown. Da fuck.
Yeah, if you look inside the you could see they took the name off the helmet.
Well, while on the Enterprise, an incident with enemy MiGs leads to a fateful battle. Iceman and Hollywood are launched to intercept a pair of MiGs, but are jumped by 4 additional enemy fighters. Hollywood is shot down and Iceman hopelessly surrounded when Maverick is launched, now with Merlin and is his RIO. Maverick quickly arrives at the scene of the battle, but is surrounded by enemy, and when he flies into one of the ship's jet wash, his own fighter briefly stalls out, and though he regains control, he flashes back to Goose's death and breaks off, leaving Iceman, who has long doubted Maverick's courage after Goose's death, trapped as Merlin desperately and furiously yells at Maverick to get back into the battle. Maverick pulls himself together and returns to assist Iceman, and they destroy 4 MiGs, prompting the remaining squadron to retreat. With this, Maverick and Iceman finally become friends, and as a reward for his heroism, Maverick is offered any assignment he chooses. He chooses to be an instructor at Top Gun. He then tosses Goose's dog tags into the ocean, signifying he has come to terms with his friend's death.
Yeah, I really wonder if Goose's wife might have wanted those dog tags. But, whatever. Have them, Poseidon. But the thing is that was interesting about this movie is, we've seen movies like Rocky. We've watched shows like Game of Thrones where you see the hero on the ropes and then then they turn it all around. They flip the tables and win. And that works in a lot of different types of film, whether it's a boxing movie, you got 9 rounds. In a dogfight, not so much. So dogfights don't last this long. Maverick says to Charlotte, he says, up there, if you think you're dead, but somehow he has the time to fly off, think about Goose, have some flashbacks, completely freeze up, and then get back in the fight. Meanwhile, Iceman's got a 5-on-1, and somehow he's staying alive this whole time. Like, dogfights just do not last this long. They're over in a matter of seconds, not minutes.
How did this encounter not start World War III?
Yeah, I'm wondering the same thing. I didn't remember. I honestly did not remember that there were actually planes getting shot out of the sky. A couple months ago, when you see the first encounter over the Persian Gulf, nobody's firing at each other, and that makes sense. But suddenly, they're blowing each other out of the sky. If you splash that many MiGs, you know that you've just started an incident with the Soviet Union. We talk about, so we do a Shout on TV, the Game of Thrones, and what Game of Thrones is effectively doing this season is callbacks to earlier seasons, bringing the story full circle and doing it in an effective way that doesn't insult the audience. I felt like when they're trying to wrap up the movie, they're just like having all these callbacks, but they're doing it like in an ineffective manner. Like it's over the top.
No, the ending makes no sense, right? We've talked about Maverick is an undisciplined pilot. He's reckless. He's dangerous. Why would you want him to become an instructor? Do you want to spread that reckless nature and not have someone fly by doctrine? It doesn't make any sense. And then why would Maverick want to go back to the scene of his best friend's death? You'd think he'd want to avoid that.
But I think that's exactly what Raj is getting at, is the fact that in most movies that we watch, most shows that we watch, we will praise the writing for bringing things full circle, that people develop, they learn lessons, like Walter White in Breaking Bad, right? That their decisions impact their future, and everything that you do sticks with you. In this case, they're like, okay, he's like, I'm not leaving my wingman. Okay, he learned that lesson. Oh, I'm going to hit the brakes and they'll fly right by. Oh, that's a callback to something he did before. The buzzing of the tower, the switching to guns instead of missiles. You see these callbacks, and then finally you get to that they're trying to signify, they're trying to tell the audience he's learned his lesson. Now he wants to be responsible. Now he wants to go teach other people the lessons he's learned. But I agree with you, Big D. It makes no sense. It doesn't add up. They just they force it into the story.
Well, with all the money that they were spending on jet fuel and turning around big aircraft characters, you'd think they would have brought in a consultant to teach Tom Cruise how to throw, because
that was terrible.
Oh my God, he looked like he was doing a pirouette.
It was embarrassing. I said to my wife, I said, did you notice that? She goes, oh, he throws like a girl.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that, but he throws like you want an aggressive throw in a situation like that. Like, this is a very man moment, and it did not come across.
He's throwing away the dog tags of his best friend. Imagine if the wind blows them back in and they kind of get hooked on the side of the ship.
It's like up that no one can get it. He's gonna get a mop to kind of knock it down. Yeah. But again, Iceman's the real fucking hero of this movie, right?
Yeah. Like, Iceman does it right. He saves the day. And you say that Maverick's learned something. I disagree. Iceman is a voice of reason. After saving the day, Iceman tells him, you're still dangerous, but you can be my wingman. Mm-hmm. So I disagree. I would not want Maverick out there teaching our future pilots.
Well, so we were texting last night as we were watching this, Big D, and I asked you the question, when you were in the Army, did any of the guys make fun of the Navy as a result of Top Gun?
No, I don't think anybody takes the Navy seriously.
But that's so before or after this movie?
Oh,
like, does this movie?
The pilots you take seriously, but
Okay.
no, I think every branch of the military thinks they're the best, so I won't, put them down.
I don't think the Coast Guard thinks that they have the best movies. Like, I think the Coast Guard is very comfortable saying we're not as great as everybody else.
But when you think about like the military branches and the movies that are made about them, the Navy's like down there with the Coast Guard, with one, maybe two exceptions. And here's what I mean: like all the Navy movies are pretty terrible. You got Top Gun, G.I. Jane, Navy SEALs, Under Siege, Officer and a Gentleman. All the Broadway musical movies are Navy. And maybe you could say the exceptions. The exceptions are The Hunt for Red October and A Few Good Men. Like those are the only Navy movies. Now, compare that against Army. You've got Stripes, Saving Private Ryan, Black Hawk Down, Band of Brothers, The Deer Hunter, Apocalypse Now, The Hurt Locker, Bravo 20, Green Zone, Three Kings, and of course, Band of Brothers. Like, that gets you jazzed up to joining the military versus, playing oiled up, greasy volleyball, right?
I think film lends itself better to open field battle, large ships fighting in an open sea. Like Pearl Harbor was another one you missed, but I think you make a more compelling story when it's man on man or soldier on soldier. not that. Soldier on soldier.
No, I think it's more compelling. Yeah, it's man on man. It's definitely more compelling.
Yes.
well, I love that. Where did you get that? You sent me that picture because I was like, I'm not sure I can name a quality Air Force movie either. Maybe Iron Eagle and Iron Eagle 2. But what was that? What was it? What was the cover, the DVD that you sent me, Big D? What was the movie called?
I don't know what you're talking about.
It was like Air Force Hard or something like that. Anyway, all right. Are we done here?
No, Gene had something.
Well, I just want to point out that at the end of Saving Private Ryan, when the P-51s swipe in, that's the Air Force, and they're badass.
Yeah, but at the time, that was just the Army. That was the Army Air Force.
Yeah, that's true. It was the Army Air Corps.
Air Corps, sorry. All right. Anyway, well, now's the time of the podcast where we break out our Shat meter and give you our wipe scores. If you've never listened to the podcast, it's a 0 to 5 wipe score. 0 is a perfect movie. It's the equivalent of the men's Navy locker room. It's clean, it smells fresh, and there's all these hot dudes walking around in nothing but towels. 5 wipes is the equivalent of an unnecessarily long volleyball game. You're covered in dirt, you stink of sweat, and it'll make you late to a first date with an older coworker who you really shouldn't be banging in the first place. So that's how we rate the movies, 0 to 5. Gene, how many wipes does this movie need to get off your butt?
For me, I think this movie is somehow greater than the sum of its parts. The action makes no sense at all, but it's still exciting. The romantic scenes are awful, but Tom Cruise somehow, despite his 5'7" frame, is still charming. The movie's infinitely quotable, as we talked about. Everyone in the movie is likable. I can't think of a single character where I'm like, I could have done without that guy, especially Sundown. He's probably my favorite. And you remember every scene out of the movie. So for me, this is my Home Alone. Raj, this is 2 wipes for me.
Big D, how many wipes?
So I was perfectly ready to give it a minimum of 3 wipes, but I don't think it's fair. I'm gonna go 2.5 wipes.
What?
Yeah, just listen, hear me out. So what Gene said makes sense. It's better than the sum of all the parts. The action is fun, the memorable lines, the characters you love, the actors are great. The film has that quality that you could only get by teaming up with the military, and those shots that they got really set the mood, and I liked it. The only main gripe I have with it is it's the length of it. The second half drags on. It's an hour and 50 minutes. If you cut it down by 10, 15 minutes, I think it's exponentially more watchable. So I would watch this movie again, but I would fast forward through maybe the whole romantic scene and the death of Goose. But overall, I think it's a better version of a modern Jerry Bruckheimer film. I think that Tony Scott had this quality about what he did. You can see it is shot beautifully, acted well, and it's fun. Is it perfect? No. But I would watch it again on fast forward.
Nah, both of you are absolutely wrong. This is a 3.5 wipe movie. Yes, Tom Cruise is charming. Anthony Edward may steal the show, and Val Kilmer is cool as hell. But it's a pretty fucking terrible movie and has the same problem as the Cruise Scott film Days of Thunder, where the action scenes don't match up. They're using stock footage with like really bad production where just nothing lines up. They rely way too heavily on ADR to explain what's happening with the action scenes as well. I think overall, like there's not a lot to this plot. There's not a lot to this movie. And it does have I think the only redeeming quality of Top Gun is the fact that it does have a heavy homosexuality subtext and subplot, as eloquently explained by Quentin Tarantino in the 1994 movie Sleep With Me. If you haven't seen that, search for it on Google. They'll take you to YouTube and you can watch that scene. But that's I think why people wanted the sequel, and I think the sequel is going to be terrible. But anyway, Gene, what does this give us now?
So the average score from me, 2 wipes, Big D 2.5 wipes, and you, Raj, 3.5 wipes, gives it an average score of 2.6 repeating.
Yeah, so 2.6 repeating puts it down in like the 23 spot in between Rocky 4 and Pretty Woman.
Perfect.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. All right.
See, justice.
There's a science to it.
Yeah, justice is done.
All right. Well, so now's the time of the podcast where we give shout outs. Gene, what is a shout out and how many do we have?
Glad you asked, Raj. A shout out is a way to show your support for Shat the Movies. You go to our website, shatthemovies.com, and scroll down. You'll see a little slide out that says get your shout out, and you click on that, type in your name, and we will read your name on the air as a guest of Shat the Movies. Shout outs this edition come from Gary, Scottish James, Reese Nicholas, Chad, Penny Feather Best Name, Chris, Mason Pipes, Victoria, Zach D, Jonathan Bachshaw, and Ross Hunter. Thank you so much for listening to Shat the Movies. And if you'd like to get your shout out, again, be sure to go to shatthemovies.com and put in your name. We appreciate your support.
Big D, what's the next movie we're going to be reviewing?
So the next movie that we're going to do is Blues Brothers, which was the scheduled pick. But just so I can let everybody know, if you go to the website, shatthemovies.com/vote, you can vote on, I think it's the next 10 weeks of movies. And each week we take the top film and we review it the following. So the upcoming categories are Military Rescues, Best Bullies, Best of Bill Murray, Hacking and Computer Movies, 90s Serial Killers, Late Night Watching, Bad Sequels, The Best of Morgan Freeman, The Best of Keanu Reeves, and then finally, after this movie, The Best of Tony Scott.
Oh, jeez. Right in. Hot Shots Part 2. Do we have a Patreon page yet where people can pay?
No, but listen, you always talk about Hot Shots Part 2. It's already on there for Bad Sequels. Why don't you go vote?
Is it? All right, I'll go vote. All right, well, that concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us everywhere on social media and share with a friend. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, Grindr, Facebook. Just search for Shat the Movies. Our website, once again, is shatthemovies.com. Our email is hosts@shatthemovies.com. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, and Bumble. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, be sure to leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, and Game of Thrones. You can find all the information for Shat on TV on our website, shatontv.com. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, and Gene Lyons, I'm Roger Roper. Be sure to join us, I don't know, whenever we release another one of these, because it's Game of Thrones season. And
it'll be 3
thanks
weeks.
so much for listening. 3 weeks. All right, 3 weeks. Thanks so much for listening. Take care. Good night and good luck.
But it was sweet when they killed Ellis, and with a little help from